So, day 7, we're going to talk about HIPAA and customer service. So HIPAA is Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1996. HIPAA, so what is it? HIPAA has two parts. The privacy rule, which defines what clients can do with the information that we have. It specifies the authorized uses and disclosure of that information. The security rule specifies administrative, physical, and technical security requirements for protected health information, or PHI. It specifies documentation requirements. And then the second part is the high-tech, which deals with the health information and technology. So what does HIPAA protect? HIPAA protects clinical, financial, lifestyle, and demographic information. So pretty much every important aspect of a person's life is protected by HIPAA. How does HIPAA apply to you? You must go to the HIPAA training, so we talked about that. You must follow HIPAA policies and procedures. You must take action when you suspect or detect a breach. So you report it to the supervisor. So let's say you erroneously give information to a client about someone else. You know, you will report it to the supervisor. We will call the client and amend the situation. But as soon as you think that, you know, there's a HIPAA breach, you should let it know to your supervisor. So what is a breach? A breach is defined as the unauthorized acquisition, access, use, or disclosure of PHI that compromises the security of privacy or integrity of PHI. So, you know, so we have examples of breaches. Violating a HIPAA policy, whether or not it results in harm to a client. Leaving paper records on the subway, not in a locked container. Writing your password on Post-it notes and leaving it at the computer, talking about clients outside with friends and family. So I think that HIPAA a lot is common sense, very like things that you wouldn't do, but you know, so you just have to be mindful of what is it that you're doing, like discussing client information outside of, you know, CSS's space, writing a password so that everyone has access to it, leaving paper records on the subway, so you don't take any casework with you whatsoever, and you don't access it outside of, you know, the time that you're here, and then again violating a HIPAA policy on whether it results in harm to the client. So, you know, you like even when we leave in messages, we don't disclose necessarily the reason why the person called or like what's the outcome of the query they had, because you don't know who's accessing that information. So in terms of HIPAA, stick to the minimum necessary standards. Keep documents secure and leave them with the helpline supervisor at the end of the day. So one of the things that here at Chawin has become more or less paperless. So in the past, you know, at the end of the day, you would print all of your cases and you would bring it to your supervisor. Now it's like everything is through the database. You just write an intake form with the case numbers so that the supervisor can look them up and review them, but you're not handing out so much paper with PHI information. So, you know, we are also helping with that. You shred documents that you no longer need and duplicate printouts of clients' cases. So sometimes the client will fax your information that we already will scan and save into the network, so we don't need additional paper, you know, copies flying around, so you just shred it at the end of the day. Be sure to log out if you are leaving for the day or will be away from your desk for more than 30 minutes. And now the computer locks you out every 10 minutes if you're inactive, but at the end of the day, you should always log out. only discuss cases with staff while you are at CSS. So if by chance we run in the subway, we're not going to discuss John Doe case and what's the outcome. We talk about the weather. We talk about like a billion other things, but not about cases. You don't record anything related to a client on a USB, laptop, or cell phone. So we don't take the client's information outside of this space. And don't access chat or enrollment database from home. So you're not expected to work. You're not expected to follow up with clients when you're not on duty, so you don't have to access those databases. Right? So that's it for HIPAA. As I said, there will be more intensive training that you will have next Thursday that, you know, it will discuss HIPAA much more. And now I will pass it on to Alini, who's going to talk about customer service and how to handle difficult clients.
And you said the HIPAA training is at 10 next Thursday? Yes.
So Alini is one of our East Harlem staff. She's a social worker and does amazing work.
Thanks, Priscilla. Hi, good morning. So quickly, just so I have everybody's name. I know Neri. Danny. Brendan. Rachel. Richard. Okay. Okay, great. Okay, great. So we'll get started. This training is on customer service, consumer service, and they asked me to do it because, as Priscilla said, I'm a social worker. So, and a lot of this might seem maybe common sense, but it's kind of some good things to just have a conversation about and just be mindful of, because you're going to talk to a lot of different people and a lot of different emotional places, and it's some good skills to have so you don't become overwhelmed by people's situations, right? So as a volunteer, you're the face of the program. A lot of times, people, as they move, it's their first encounter with CSS is to call the helpline. So you're really like the front line. And so people call us because they need help. Many people are calling because they're in some sort of crisis situation, health, financial, emotional. And, you know, by the time it becomes a crisis, all this other stuff has happened, right? And they're finally realizing that they need help with something, they don't understand something. A lot of times they feel powerless, right? So that's kind of a good thing to keep in mind, knowing that your first interaction with them and their first interaction with us is in this sort of intense situation. And health insurance is really complicated and not something that's easily understood. So when we have issues with health insurance, it becomes overwhelming. I know that for myself. I've been working with health insurance on a lot of different fronts for maybe like 7 years, and I'm always learning more and more and more. And the good thing is that here at CSS we have tons of resources, right? We have lots of people who can answer your questions or know how to find the answers to your questions, so that should be comforting. And so this training, you're going to just tap into some skills in order to assist callers. So these are skills that we think of when we're thinking about effectively working with callers. I think these are great life skills as well, but these are really important skills when people are calling us. So empathy, active listening, managing your own emotions, patience and timing, developing a sense of trust, ability to assess the situation, asking the right questions, understanding your limitations. And anything else you can think of that you would think to add to the list? I mean, this is a pretty good list, a pretty exhaustive list, but anything else that you would add to that? Yeah, that's actually a really good.
I'm not sure how to do something. I may have a lot of empathy for somebody, but if it wasn't something that happened to me, I'm not sure how I would convey that.
Right.
It's not the same thing as this.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't quite know what acting is.
Well, the good news is we're going to talk about it all. So, yeah. And taking good notes is actually another great thing that I would add to this list as well. Because it keeps you, you'll see that it's a good way to stay present and listening, and then just have all the information when it comes time to talk to your supervisor about it. So here we go, empathy. So empathy is defined as the feeling that you understand and share another person's experiences and emotions. So the first quote is, customers don't buy products or services, they buy good feelings and solutions to problems. And empathy may be the single most important skill you have working as a volunteer on the helpline. And as we talked about before, the callers are experiencing stressful situations and are calling for our help. And that's something always to keep in mind. And as you said, empathy is not sympathy, right? And on that note, so it's a good spot to just talk about the difference between sympathy. Sympathy can be sort of described as a sort of distant understanding, right? You kind of understand, quote unquote, what somebody's going through, but you can't feel it. Empathy means that even though you're not going through that situation, you can, or have ever been, you can feel what that person's struggle is in that moment. And it's a tough skill because it's also like a fine line, because empathy goes a long way in getting people to realize that you're on their side, but you also you want to manage your own emotions, right, and not take on that person's situation as yours, because that's how you burn out and you start feeling all these things and it's harder to do your job. So just something to keep in mind. Burning out, yeah. Yeah, and we'll talk about that, about different strategies to prevent it. So in the final quote by John Maxwell, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Big thing to remember, especially when people come at you when they're calling. They probably haven't been listened to a lot, so they're going to make you prove to them that you actually care about their situation and that you want to help them fix it. So tips into empathy. So if empathy is hard for you sometimes, or you've never really had to be in a situation where people are constantly needing you to empathize with them, use some good questions to ask yourself. So how would I feel if this is my experience? How would I feel if I had all this medical debt and I didn't understand how my medical insurance worked? I didn't even know how this could happen. What types of emotions is the caller expressing to me? People are going to express a lot of different emotions like anger, sadness, frustration, and it's good to be able to pinpoint those right away. And what do I have in common with this person? You know, it's a good place to start to think about, to start to be able to connect with somebody. And then you can ask yourself, how do I use this information? You can reflect the feelings back. You can say something like, that sounds like a really tough situation. That sounds like a really hard situation. Sometimes people just need to hear that you know that this is a hard thing for them. Or something else would be, anyone would be upset or frustrated in the situation. I know I would be. And sometimes it's okay to say nothing, and just having the awareness, it's going to come through to the caller for you, because you'd rather say something, not say something at all and be present and listening to their situation than say something inauthentic, right? Because you know when somebody says something to you that doesn't click, and then you're like, oh, they're not really there, it kind of might even trigger them to become even more defensive. By having patience and watching your tone of voice along with that, it makes it okay to maybe not have the right thing to say in that moment. So, and then practicing empathy, so these are different things that people might say to you or might happen where you would have to put your empathy into practice, right? So the first one, I just opened the bills I've been receiving from the hospital, but my surgery was 10 months ago. I'm not going to pay those bills. I didn't need those tests. Then somebody can be nonstop talking or talking over you when you try to speak. And finally, a caller who focuses on conspiracies of Obamacare, right? And they have employer-based coverage. So these are all people who, before you can get to their issue, you have to kind of see through this that they're showing to you, right? And you do that by trying to figure out where they are emotionally in that moment. And then this is just some practicing of your tone. Let's see how this goes. Okay, so this is just a statement, right? I didn't say you were wrong, but it can be said in a few different ways. And here's the example by emphasis on the different words. So does anyone want to try reading them?
I didn't think they were.
Okay. And that can sound a little defensive, right? Like, I didn't say you were wrong. Like, then the second one, do you want to read the second one?
I didn't say you were wrong.
Right.
I may have thought it.
But I didn't say you were wrong. And then the final one.
I didn't say you were wrong.
Right. So 3 very different ways to say the same sentence and can kind of be perceived in different ways. And it's just something good to keep in mind and practicing that level of tone. So tone is everything. If you smile when you speak, the caller will hear the brightness in your voice. So sometimes you get a fake, yes, Mary is very good at this. So sometimes you even have to fake it till you make it, right? But like really smiling, even though you're like, why am I doing this? It eventually will get to you, right? And your paraverbal communication and the first impression counts. So how do you introduce yourself when you answer a call? You know, and that's where your tone and trying to have that smile and that that ability to communicate right away, so that you're setting the tone for the conversation and not letting them take over the conversation right away. And you know, the golden rule: treat callers in the way that you would want to be treated, and be willing to find the answer. I find that for me, when I call customer service places, I really have to like tap into the golden rule, even though I've been on the other end, and just remember that a lot of times people are the face of wherever I'm calling, and they're just trying to figure it out. So I do things like also reflect back to them, like, I know this isn't your fault, you know, sort of thing. So we can hope sometimes that the people who call us will do that. They won't always, but it's a good way to see the opposite end, right, to put yourself in their shoes. Paraverbal, I have to double check my notes, but I believe it's the connection between your like physical demeanor and how you're going to speak. So like if you're slouching and being down, it's going to come across in the way you speak, as opposed to if you're sitting up and you're being bright and smiling, it's going to come across in the way you speak as well. So active listening. Active listening is a helpline volunteer. The majority of the time you're going to spend is listening. So, what's the difference between hearing and listening? Anyone? I mean, it's right there. But does anyone put it? Can anyone put it in their own words, or like, does anyone feel like this is clear to them what the difference is or needs?
Well, my mother is the classic example that whatever you say to her doesn't seem to really go into her head. It's polite, but it's like she doesn't have to get anything you say with her mouth.
Back out.
But she hears, because sometimes you say, could you just repeat what I said?
She'll say that, or you'll say that to her?
I'll say that, and she'll say it with some difficulty.
Yeah. Yeah, so she's hearing,
but it doesn't get
inside, right. And so, and a good way to check in with yourself when you're on the helpline is to do just that. Like, did this person just say something that I could repeat, or did I totally zone out, right? And listening is a skill, and we all have all sorts of different things going on in our lives. And when you're spending the whole day taking in other people's energy and listening to them, it seems counterintuitive, but it actually can make you tune out a lot faster. So active listening is just another way to show respect to the caller and to gain information and perspective and to really hear what they're saying. First of all, because you want to hear what they're saying, because you want to know the details. But it also, active listening is another emotional trigger that you can provide for the consumer so that they kind of come down whatever emotional place they're at. And so doing things like taking notes is a great thing that if you need help with active listening, let me take notes so that I can stay present in this conversation. And becoming an active listener, obviously pay attention, and then show that you're listening. Encourage the speaker to continue with verbal comments like yes and uh-huh. you know, when you're on the phone sometimes and nobody's speaking back and you have to check if they're still there. Like, you want them to feel like, you want to make sure that they know that you're still there. And provide feedback, reflect on what has been said by paraphrasing. A lot of times people have huge stories to tell us. And so it's good for us, too, to be like, hold on, let me just repeat what you just told me so that you can make sure that that's clear, and then you also help them to see that you're listening to them. Ask questions, summarize periodically. Do not judge. Allow the speaker to finish their thought before you respond. I've heard a lot of crazy things said to me in the past, and I think I'm on my way to mastering the skill of keeping like a flat face, of like not reacting to what's being said and just trying to pull out the key things, because we're not being friends with the people that we're calling, but we're not being mean either. So, you know, if somebody's saying something really egregious to you, or something that can be really triggering for you, remember that. Like, this person is just a little moment in life that you're trying to help them. Like, so, and respond appropriately. Treat the other person as she or he or you would want to be treated. Again, the golden rule. And assert yourself respectfully. It's okay to be assertive, and we're going to talk a little bit about how to, the difference between assertive and aggressive. But a lot of times when we're talking to people who are in need of help, like, if we empathize too much, we get afraid to be assertive and to draw boundaries. And so it's again, that balance of, you know, letting people know that you are there for them, but not letting them be abusive or aggressive or, you know, set the boundaries. And managing your own emotions. You should mentally prepare yourself before a call. If you just had a call that was really intense, somebody else was really rude to you, or it took forever, take a break. You know, regroup. Go ahead.
Is there a particular subject matter that tends to generate like tense emotion in the call?
You mean from people who are calling the helpline?
Yeah.
Not any particular topic that says, you know, this is going to turn out ugly. Like, you never know in which direction the call will go and what feelings the person is bringing.
Yeah.
Basis. I mean, you can imagine that someone who needs, like, treatment that is being denied, you know, will be upset about it. I mean, it's just, it could go so wide and that, you know, there's no way to narrow it down. So it's just on a call-by-call basis.
Yeah. But that's a really good point, because they're all going to bring, it's all these different cases, but they're all going to bring they're all going to bring emotion to it. I think it's important to hear that. So practice stress management techniques. So, you know, if you need a break before the next call, take a break, get up, get some water, walk away. Don't take it personally. Callers have asked you for help, but you are not the problem. You're definitely not the problem. And try to remember that. You're just kind of an easy target, like, sometimes, you know, and so that's why it's really important to maintain your emotions or control your emotions. And remember that you're good at helping others, or you like helping others, and that's why you're here. That's why you decided to volunteer for CHA and for CSS. Recognize and accept that you're definitely going to have some challenging situations. There's no doubt about it, but that's okay, you know. It's part of the experience, and you're going to learn a lot and grow a lot from it. And then you're also going to have some other great experiences as well. Like, you're going to really be able to help people.
And just know that if you have a difficult client that you feel like, you know, I can't really deal with this client, the supervisor is there. So you don't have to deal with it on your own. If you get to a point that you said, you know, this is unhealthy, this is like not going in the right direction, the supervisor will be there and you can just hand the call over.
Right.
To the supervisor. So you don't have to put yourself in a situation that is really uncomfortable, that you feel like you're burning out, you know, that you're not here to take abuse, you're here to help. So, you know, most of the clients we get on the helpline are nice and very receptive. You know, you get, you know, are rude and mean, but, you know, it's all, you have to just, like, what's going on in their life and what's making them bitter, and, like, don't take it in. Don't take it with a grain of salt.
Exactly. and like as Priscilla just said, no one to ask help with supervisor. There's tons of support here, so you should always keep that in mind. So more practicing of self-care during your shift. Again, the supervisors are there to answer any of your questions or concerns, so use them. Always take a break after a challenging call. In fact, take breaks when you need them. There's a lot of helpline meetings and trainings to discuss concerns and learn new skills. So really take advantage of that. It's also a good way to come together and, share the experience. And debrief with your fellow helpline volunteers. There's other people on the phones having similar experiences, and it's good to know that you're not alone and you're not the only one that can sometimes have challenging clients,
We have ongoing meetings sometimes with time for everybody.
So yes, we have mini trainings. So the volunteers, you will see that they are pretty tight-knit group, especially on the day they volunteer. You tend to form a bond with the volunteers on that same day. So they always meet and discuss, but we meet with the volunteers on a monthly basis. We talk about what's going on, we present new information on new issues, but if there are burning issues that are coming up, you should always feel free to come to the supervisor. You can also share it with your fellow volunteers, but always come to the supervisor so that we can address the issue that's going on, because we meet on a monthly basis. So it might be a month, too much for you to wait to discuss, this came up and this is what happened. Tell the supervisor.
So timing and patience. So the definition, the capacity to accept or tolerate delay, trouble, or suffering without getting angry or upset. And this is really the idea of being present, right? And understanding that things happen, and how can we manage our emotions when things happen that we don't want to happen. And patience doesn't come easily to most of us. It's a learned skill for a lot of us, and that's okay. But our callers do need us to be patient. They're probably struggling with something overwhelming, and it's good to remember that what they're struggling with, we're not struggling with. And then tips to improve patience: stress management, finding whatever it is that you need to help you manage your stress. Again, using your skill of empathy, as well as learning to be assertive, right? To balance those two. It's really important for stress management to be able to know what your boundaries are and let people know that you have boundaries. Slow down. You can put a caller on hold. If it's a lot for a moment, it's okay to say, can you hold on just for a moment? Because I'm sure that the caller is also going to appreciate that you took the time out to be more present and be more patient with them than you just trying to push through and having your own feelings to deal with on top of theirs. You may have the answer, but the caller may not be ready to hear it. I've seen this happen a lot. I can hear a story and I'm like, okay, boom, 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 this is how we're going to manage this. But for whatever reason, nobody's listened to them before, or they just feel like they need to get this off their chest, or they're still angry. And, it might take a little bit for them to actually hear the answer that you have for them. And I think that's where it becomes really important, your tone and not managing your emotions, because a lot of times when people are going through that, they kind of want you to meet them where they are emotionally, right? And so, the little game here is to not do it, to not meet them emotionally, but just have enough patience to let them have it out and then be ready to hear you. And then slowly count to 10. 10 seconds always helps.
You can usually ask me for
they can ask you for an Ativan? Oh, Lord. So the next thing we want to talk about is building trust. It's really important to build trust with people who call you. You have a short amount of time, so that's where it becomes refining the skill of building trust is really important, but it's totally doable. And building trust is going to help people win over and let go of their anger faster once they know that you're doing something for them. So you can remind them of things that this is a free service. It's a nonprofit consumer assistance program. set the scene for privacy. Know that they can share with you and that everything is confidential. Reinforce that your main role is to help them. That's the reason you're on the helpline. And then explain why we ask for certain information. You know, a lot of information you're going to get is sensitive, like age, immigration status, income. So explaining why you want it, and also, like, sometimes always repeating to them that it's private and confidential helps. And recognize what is out of our scope and setting clear expectations. And the more you do it, the more you'll realize, like, what you do and what you can offer and what they might ask for that's beyond your scope. And there's lots of different resources available here when that does happen, so you can refer or navigate them to whatever else they need. One of the other things that will come up commonly too, or you'll probably encounter at some point, is questions of people's mental health when they're calling the line. 1 in 4 American adults suffer from a mental disorder in any given year. That's a lot. And historically, people with mental illness have been shut out of the system, denied access to proper mental health care, and they're really stigmatized and marginalized in a lot of ways. So a lot of times somebody who's presenting with mental health can be even a more intense case because you have this other layer to go through. And that doesn't mean that they don't need something from us. It just it might require a little bit more patience. Their disability may make it more difficult for them to understand information, to take independent action, or effectively cope with stressful situations. And just going back to that, remembering that also because of that, they might just need somebody else to advocate for them with you. So somebody that might be able to explain their situation better. And, you know, it's always good to ask, do you have somebody that helps you? Do you have a social worker? Do you have other people who are helping you get all these services who might be able, if they're not able to express themselves clearly, that other person can give you clearer details, you know, and you work together as a team. So mental health, people can be struggling with anxiety, depression, paranoia. You know, that's obviously not an exhaustive list, but those are just examples. And the ways that we can treat people, that we can help, is that we remember that we treat the individual as credible, and we're going to assume that they're a good reporter of their experience, and imagine that they have gotten the runaround elsewhere, which might even, the runaround elsewhere might have just made it even more for them to share their story if they have anxiety or depression, right? And take your time. So just remembering to first let people tell you their story and see how it's fitting together, and building trust with them as well, and letting them feel safe to share it, which could take a little bit more time before, and then it's necessary asking if they have somebody else that might be able to clarify the story a little bit better for you, or that they're just working with and helping them. You're not a therapist, you're not a friend, you're not an intensive case manager, and that's okay. So you don't need to diagnose them when they're on the phone. You don't need to be able to figure out if they have depression or something else. And you might have to end the call quickly and offer to have them call back with somebody who may be able to assist them. And that's totally okay as well. And again, you can ask them, is there somebody who assists you with your healthcare decisions? And then in some cases, it might be appropriate to refer clients to LifeNet as well. Priscilla, I'm not as familiar with LifeNet. Are you more familiar with what they do?
No, but it's like when people like call and express that, you know, they want to end their life and things of that nature, you know, that's one of the resources that we will give to them also. And I know that I had a client for once that, you know, expressed that she wanted to end her life, and that's one of the steps. So she went into a surgery. They ended up amputating the wrong leg, so they had to amputate the 2 legs, and she was on ambulance, and it was like very stressful situation. So, you know, yeah, so you have to, you know, that was one of the resources that I offered her. I like saying with her on the line a lot. Like, again, not the house enough, but.
So say she's going to get quite rich.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if undocumented.
No, so that is it. She didn't end up suing. She didn't end up like becoming rich or anything like that.
Wow.
It was really.
If that's kind of mistaken, they will want, they'll offer you a decent settlement. It's a cost of doing business. When they're wrong, they gotta pay patients.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a really good example of managing your emotions, right?
Yeah. Because
we might all sit here and be like, oh, I would have filed a lawsuit as well, but she's already got these other things that she's dealing with.
Yeah.
And, yeah, exactly. So these are some different examples of doing some advocacy on the phone. Does anyone want to read about, this is an example of a caller who may be experiencing a mental health issue. Would anyone like to read about Mrs. F?
Mrs. S called the hotline for assistance with an appeal regarding her health care. She reports that she had received a bill in the mail that didn't make any sense. When you start to ask her exploratory information, she refuses to provide you with any information. She asks if you are reporting this information directly to the government. How do you feel?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So these are questions to ask yourself, and we can answer them too. So I always think it's really important to ask yourself how you feel first, because that you should, before you do anything else, gauge exactly where you're at. Are you angry? Are you getting really sad for this client? You know. So how do we feel after our encounter with Mrs. F?
I would feel very challenged. Like I really have to step up to the plate. And if that happened in the first few weeks, I'm sure I've been on to do it. But anxiety will come up.
Right.
And I just have to try to slow her down and comfort her.
Yeah.
We need this information if we're going to help you.
Exactly. That's great. This is part of what Aline said. You know, you build in that stage, saying that, you know, we are trustworthy, we are here to help you, and, you know, we ask sensitive information because we need it in order to help you appropriately.
This stuff is fairly tame. Compared to telephone soliciting. When you're trying to, you have to try to sell people things they don't want. You know, the philosophy is they always want and they need this. Explain to them why they need it.
Right.
But often that you get into, but it's closer. And it isn't.
Yeah, and then in our case, it's like, right, and like you're calling and soliciting them. It's different here because they're calling and soliciting us, and then they're still yelling at us, right? Like so what would be the next steps with you know, you've managed your feelings, you're thinking about where she's at, and you're trying to calm her. So what would be some next steps?
We will try to clarify that. So she's already asking without reporting this information directly to the government. So I will clarify that first.
Yeah.
We should trust that I'm not just taking all her information and just going rampant somewhere else.
Yeah.
Because it almost feels like, I get the sense that she probably feels like this could be used for fraudulent purposes.
Right.
Or anything else. So I will try to like calm that.
Right. Exactly. And she's a good one to really emphasize that privacy and confidentiality with, right?
How does that ever help?
Yeah. Yeah.
It comes up in every medical.
Yeah. Exactly. And you can direct them if they have access to the website to go check out the website to see that we're credible and all of those things too, right? So substance abuse. Occasionally we have callers who are under the influence of alcohol and or drugs. The person could be hostile, angry, they slur their words, or just not coherent, right? And this is a good place to have to assess the situation, to really look and think about, like, can I handle this? What am I actually able to do for this person at this time? Are they in any type of danger? Like, especially we have, our call hours are, 9 to 4? Yeah. So somebody's calling you within daytime hours and under the influence of drugs, they obviously have a lot going on in their lives, and are they okay? And it's really important that not judging part in this moment as well, because, you know, you never know why somebody is having a life experience that looks like that in that moment. And do I want help from the supervisor about this? And can I really help this person in the state that they're currently in? And if the answer to that is, if you need help from the supervisor, or if you realize you really can't help that person at that moment, a good way to respond is to say, this doesn't seem like a good time to talk to you. You sound upset, or you sound like you're not feeling well. We would really like to help you, but maybe when you're feeling more calm or better, we'd be able to do that. We don't want to miss any of your information. You know, really emphasizing that you're trying, you really want to help them, and you want to have the best experience possible. Maybe a different time would be better for them to call.
I actually have a question about, about the previous scenario with the person who is reluctant to provide information. Mm-hmm. If after we, you know, explain why we need the information and why it will be helpful to us, and, you know, the limits, what we can do with it, and if they're still reluctant to provide information, is there some bare minimum of information that we would need to collect in order to help?
Let's say someone needs health insurance and they refuse to provide income or household tax information. Mm-hmm. You cannot assess their eligibility for any given program. What you can do is give general information about, okay, this is Medicaid and this is the income for this, and this is a QHP and this is the income for that, and just note that I'm just giving you generic information. In order to assess you, you will have to provide more specific information. You know, you can call back at a time that you feel like you're ready to disclose that information, and we will be able to help you. But you just provide information in general terms. Right.
And does that happen?
That you're able. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people sometimes that they're unwilling to provide information about the immigration status or the household size, just for various reasons. And so you encounter that a lot. Like, I mean, you said, you know, it's different when you are calling someone to offer benefits or solicit any type of service, but they are calling us, and sometimes they have attitudes, they have issues that like why did you call in the first place if you didn't want to hear this, or if you didn't want the information? But you know, that's where checking yourself first, finding out where you are, and like separating yourself from that. Like, this is, you know, this is this person who's having this experience. My attitude towards this is, I'm going to help you in the best way that I can, and then in the best way that I can, and then I'll leave the rest to you.
Exactly. So this is a model for dealing with angry callers. I think anger is one of the most common emotions you'll see if you're going to see somebody with intense emotion, right? That can negatively impact you. And that's a lot of times, a good way to think about it is that anger is an easy step out of feeling powerless. So for people, you know when you're feeling really like down about something, sometimes it's good to get angry, even though we think it's a bad thing. But so it's a natural move up in the emotional ladder to get angry, just to feel like you have some more control. And that's just always something good to keep in the back of your mind, that's a lot of times why people are getting angry. So this model starts with telling you to apologize and acknowledge the caller's feelings. You're going to spend a lot of your time soothing callers, as we've talked a lot about already, and 20% actually working on the problem. If people just called us with a problem, and that was it, and it was like a very robotic experience, it would be it would be a very different experience for everyone. But a lot of times it's just emotion that's going on. Empathize with the caller. See how much you can put yourself in their shoes, but still maintaining remembering that it's not their experience, it's yours, or it's not your experience, it's theirs. Accept responsibility. You answer the call. So you've accepted the responsibility to see what we can do to help the person bring down their anger level to a place where someone can help, right? So once you've taken the call, you've kind of committed yourself to doing this to the best of your ability. Prepare to help. Be sincere. Let the caller know that you care about their problem. Use the caller's name. It helps to reduce their anger. I know when people use my name, I'm always like, oh, wow, okay, like I'm feeling better already. So, and say things, let's see how I can help you. Other tips for sustaining people who might be angry, again, appear centered and calm. Try to keep that smile on your face. Like, think about your body posture, how you're physically feeling in the moment. Depersonalize. It's not about you. It's definitely not about you. And don't worry about who is right or wrong, especially in the beginning. Arguing with somebody to prove that you're right and they're wrong is just going to make you spend way more time talking to them. So, you know, don't think in the beginning, especially in the beginning, about who's right or wrong. As we talked about before, there aren't any right things to say except to try to calmly bring the person's level of anger down and reflect and restate their feelings and emotions. Don't get loud or try to yell over the screaming person. In fact, it might even be helpful to lower your voice. And give the person a short period to vent. Give them a little bit of time in the beginning to get it all out, and then, and then bring them back in. And try to, within the beginning, to also set your boundaries. Sometimes, I think we're going to talk about this, people need way more time to vent than we have time for, so making it clear how much time you actually have on the phone with them is really important, because it already tells them that they have an allotted time period with you.
And one of the things you will notice is that I want to tell you like the whole life story within 5 minutes, and it's a lot for you to try to take notes and to hear. So, you know, depending on where they are and what you're saying first, you will say, you know, I would let you get it all out, but then you will have to repeat yourself because it's too much going on. You know your story better than anyone. Yeah. So I'm letting you let it out, but I will ask you again because I need to take notes. I need to better understand the situation. So if it's good, like I'm telling you this, and then I'm going to restate, you know, parts that you don't get.
Exactly.
So,
no, this one, no, absolutely not. We spend time with clients, but you know, and you know, sometimes a call can take you two hours, but you don't necessarily want to be 2 hours with someone who's abusive. Or like, if it's a call that is like going nowhere and it keeps going on, and you know, you want to let the client know, you know, this is a helpline, we have other callers on the line, so I want to be productive, I want to help you, but if it's not going in the right direction, or if you're not progressing with this call, you know, I will take as much information as I can. I'm going to have my supervisor give you a call, and that's you know.
Yeah.
Of course, you want to try to help as much in that one call, but if it's something that is just not moving, it's not working, then you have to know your boundaries and understand, like, you can't spend 8 hours with someone on the line and then nothing.
The supervisors are lawyers, social workers, marketers, and psychologists.
Everything. Everything. So here's another example. And this one is of an angry caller. If anyone like to read this?
I can, sure. Mrs. B is irate. She believes she's been victim of fraud. When she begins to tell you her story, she's difficult to follow and she's yelling. After a few minutes, you are able to gather that she was approached by a Medicare Advantage plan who promised her better coverage than she had been receiving through original Medicare. However, now she's paying more for her coverage, and many of her routine medications are not covered by the new plan. The representative had assured her that all of this would be covered. During the call, when you attempt to ask questions, Mrs. B becomes defensive and tells you you're not listening to her.
So how are we feeling after our call with Mrs. B?
You really want to tell her either to go away, hang up on her, or you want to say, okay, I'm sorry, I was listening, but I didn't quite understand. Please go on, and just let them go on indefinitely until you feel that they're never going to stop. I'm kind of passive, and if someone says I'm not listening, I wouldn't argue with that. I just let them go on, but maybe I'd stop listening.
Right. We wouldn't want that to happen, though, right? Yeah.
I was really frustrated after she's yelling, and she thinks that I'm not listening. So that right there, I probably just be like, I understand anything that I'm not listening, but so you're telling me that this Medicare Advantage plan did not help you with anxiety. So I'll repeat whatever she was telling me, yelling, because I'll be writing it down. And then, as Richard said, write it down. And then by that moment, hopefully I'll calm her down, because I'm repeating what she just told me.
Yeah.
Or if you assume that I was not listening.
Right.
And you have to keep checking yourself.
Yeah.
Because, like, why are you yelling at me? I'm just answering the phone. What is going on, right?
Yeah.
So you just want to check yourself. No, but I'm just saying, like, you might think that.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, you have to edit yourself. I like not everything that's so you just have to, like, okay, you could, in terms of feeling, you can understand where she's coming from. You know, she was, she had something that was working, they promised her something better, and now she's in a bind. So you cannot kind of understand what she's saying. She's Medicare, she's, over 65, so you just have to, like, kind of try to depersonalize it and see, like, where is the person here, and, like, try to, like, empathize, like, bring all your empathy to understand, okay, this is where she's at, this is what's going on. If it was my grandmother, I will also be upset. So you have to try to find something, like, to bring it home, and, just let her know if she's, like, screaming, I'm listening to you, I'm hear you, you don't need to scream, I hear you perfectly well. So, just let her know, like, the tone, you need to tone it down a little bit if it's something that is, like, affecting you, but, just bring it home and try to understand really what's going on, and, like, understand this is not about you. She's not upset with you, she's upset about the situation, and you just hearing about it.
Yeah. And then it comes to a moment, I think, with somebody like this, like, are you able to help her or not? If you can calm her down, definitely, right? If not, maybe it's ask a supervisor for help or something. Because sometimes even somebody in that situation just wants, like, something that will soothe them is being like, oh, somebody at a higher power will, like, right, will answer my question. But those are all great strategies, So your ability to assess the situation. So when you might need help is when, you have an angry client, somebody with a mental health issue, filing a complaint, or a complicated issue. Again, a supervisor is almost always available when you're on the helpline. It's always, yeah. I was going to say, which is great. So, and if for some reason the supervisor is working with somebody else, or it might take a little bit longer to be able to talk to the supervisor of the case, it's okay to tell the caller that you're just going to get their info and have somebody call them back. And it's totally okay if you don't have the answer right away. People also appreciate that you're going to do the work and the research. I know when Mary and I are up in East Harlem, and we have tons of very, very different cases, and almost always I need to do more research, and people are assured by that, and they know that we're trying to get the best answers possible for them. And I think it's the same on the helpline.
Yeah, like, I'd rather wait and get the right answer than you give me a quick fix that is incorrect.
Yeah.
So they would certainly take that into consideration, and they would appreciate the fact that you are taking it a step up so that they could get, the right information.
Exactly. And so these are just some examples of what to say and what not to say. I think they're pretty clear. But for example, the first one is, if you're talking about child's representation services, what you wouldn't say is, it sounds like you need 5 lawyers to help you with that. Your case will be assigned to a lawyer who will represent you in the external appeal. The appropriate thing to say would be, if you send us your documents, a health counselor will review them and get back to you in about 10 days. If you don't hear back from us by that time, please call us back.
We never want to promise clients that they will get a lawyer. We do have attorneys and stuff, but the case handler could be Mary, and Mary isn't qualified as a lawyer. She has another degree, she has another expertise. So, you know, because sometimes when like someone else gets the case and are you an attorney? No, I'm not. Then like they're turned off, they don't want to deal with the person. So you want to manage the expectations from the very beginning. Like someone who's qualified will give you a call. It doesn't matter what their degree is, they are qualified. Trust me, if they're here, they are qualified.
Yeah. The next example is they tell you that no one's called them back yet. So what not to say would be that, well, that's not good. We must have lost your case in the shuffle. The right thing to say is, I'm happy to check on the status of your case. Could you give me your name and telephone number so I can look you up in our system? You know, and that's more trust building, right? You don't want to call someone and have them tell you, oh, we lost your stuff, like, you know. The next is, you are funded by the government. I can't trust you. What not to say is, yes, you just can't trust the government these days, can you? Again, these are, yeah. So the more appropriate thing to say is, we are funded by the New York State Department of Health to help people obtain and solve problems with their insurance. Our helpline is answered by volunteers. We're not affiliated with any health plans and are a consumer advocacy program. And finally, I hate my health plan. I disagree with this decision. You definitely shouldn't say, right, this healthcare system sucks. You should say something more along the lines of, I hear that you're frustrated and I'd like to help. Can you tell me a little bit more about what happened? You know, these are all very obvious things, but it's always good to, you know, take a look and see, more so you can see what's the right thing to say in that moment.
Especially for the last one, like when you like see that the client really has messed up here. You don't want to jump in the bandwagon with the client and say, yes, you should sue the plan and it's horrible. That's not your role. So you'll be able to help them kind of resolve the situation, and then they make other decisions on their own. So, but you just want to, like, as much as you empathize, you don't want to go necessarily to that extreme when, like, like.
I can't tell you how often I've been told, insurers, government people, by doctors, that the healthcare system sucks.
It's in many ways it does, but this is what we have, and we have to work with it, right? Yeah. So saying it's sucks is really not, like, helping the situation. Yeah. So we just have to, like, take it a step higher and say, okay, we're going to look beyond what's not working and try to, like, make it better, look at what's working, and, you know, work with it.
Exactly.
You know, because they're saying it's hard. It's like we could sit here and say that all day, and it's not helping.
Yeah. Then we wouldn't have a helpline, right? So more tips for handling calls. Appear neutral, centered and calm, like our running theme today. Be professional and courteous on every call. Remembering that you're the face of the program. Again, be personalized. We are all interested in public health issues, but callers' problems aren't our personal problems. There are no sides. Don't worry about who's right or wrong. There aren't any right things to say except to try to calmly get the caller's story and exchange information. And reflect or state their feelings, emotions. Do not get loud or try to yell over a screaming person. And give the person a short period of time to vent, but don't vent yourself. So, you know, all of these things we've discussed. And then use your supervisor as a resource. There's a supervisor assigned to each shift to assist you with calls. And these are the different ways that a supervisor can help you. They can help you strategize on how to assist a caller who is experiencing a challenging situation. Remember, the supervisor is seeing everybody's calls, right? So there's a good chance that whatever this person's experiencing, they've already seen on another call. So they would probably have some great tips. Troubleshooting with technical issues, database, finality, things like that. They're going to have But the
That is that part needs to be edited because that's the form system that we're using again.
oh, what are we using now?
Vocalization.
Okay. So additional information on various healthcare issues. Again, they have tons of information to provide you. They can give you feedback and, you know, really just make you feel supported. And helping determine if a caller's situation is appropriate to be reviewed by a case handler. Taking over a call if you feel uncomfortable or overwhelmed. So even if a case is going to be reviewed by a case handler, this doesn't mean that all cases will be accepted. Just something really good to think about and to know. So we want to be careful about what we state we can actually do for a caller.
We never want to make promises. Yes, we're going to resolve this problem. Yes, this is wrong, and we're going to fix it immediately. It's just we're going to see what we can do to help you. We will do our best, but like you want to like manage clients' expectations. One of the things we're doing is not have clients send those documents right away, because when they send documents, they feel I have shifted my burden over to you, and now you take over, and sometimes that's not really what's going on. So you want to manage client expectations at all times.
So this is just some case handling stuff, information that you can take from the client to help kind of streamline and figure out where to direct them or what you need to do. So obviously the reason for their calling, or why they're calling you. And is this something that's for the Navigator program or the CHAP program? So, and that's the difference between post-enrollment or enrollment. Yeah. The timeline of events, how did things play out? Like, especially when it comes to if later on they need to do appeals or something like that, the timing of how things happen becomes really important to people's cases. And then just their basic info, the name, the county, marital status, work status, things like that become really important.
Yeah.
That's all on the form.
Case handling, yes. This is like more of the intake. It's like putting a puzzle together. You call in with an issue, and we're trying to see how to put the pieces together to make the most sense out of it and to help you. So that's what you're doing during the intake. You want to know what's the reason of the call. Kind of based on that reason, you will determine like where to fit that call, and then the timeline of events, like when it happened, what actions have been taken, what's going on, and all of the basic information that goes along with that.
So this is just when you're answering and greeting the call. So good afternoon or good morning, it's called Community Health Advocates. My name is whatever, and how can I help you today? And then for the CHA helpline, does the CNN, does that apply? Are they answering for CNN calls as well? Okay, so and then that's how you would answer a call that would come in for CNN. So you would call the Community Services Society of New York as opposed to having called the Community Health Advocates.
You will see that through the call. It will, through whichever queue is coming, it will tell you whether it's a CNN call or it's coming from the chat queue or from HIPAA. It will tell you where the call is coming from, so you know how to adjust the greeting.
I'm sorry, CNN is the Navigator?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so developing a strategy for your case handling. These are just good ways to like keep you organized. So defining the need, what does this person need? And that, all the stuff we talked about before is especially for when that's the hardest thing to get out of a client. Sometimes what they present as a problem isn't actually the problem, right? Try to figure out what came before the need, like what was a series of events that led to them needing help with something. And define what steps can be taken to address this particular need. And again, see if this case needs to be reviewed or determine if this case needs to be reviewed by a case handler. You can speak with your supervisor about this. And I think the more you do this, the easier it gets to see these things,
initially,
right?
it's like you will always look about like, okay, I got this call, what do you think? But the more you do it, the more proficiency you will build, and the better you will become.
Yeah. This is the translation services number.
Yeah, so
Does that have to be updated too, or no?
No, that's current. So we have different languages like Spanish, we have Russian, Cantonese or Mandarin, one of those. So like here in the office we have some language capabilities, but if someone calls with, they speak Arabic or they speak another language, then we have the language now that we can use to help, get an interpreter to get a sense of what's the client issue and to help them. And to some extent, because CHA and TNN have network affiliates, if we can refer the client to one of our affiliates where they serve clients in that particular language, we will do that.
So this is just some case handling practice that we can go through. So I'll read this one. So Denzel Washington calls the helpline. He explains that 2 months ago he had emergency surgery and the hospital was paid by his insurance company, but he still owes over $5,000 for the anesthesiologist. He doesn't understand why this doctor was not covered. He lives on a limited income, and there's no way that he can make this payment. So, does anyone want to?
First, let's have call. You think?
Yes.
You think that's a CNN call or it's a chat call? It's a chat call. CNN.
I don't know. I guess.
So CNN call is when someone looking for insurance.
Yeah. I got it backward. Yeah.
Chat is like when someone already has insurance and they're trying to, they have an issue. So here, like what some of the basic information that you will ask him.
Well, this emergency me. I'm obviously going to want to know what plan he has.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask him to get plans look good. So not to send me the look necessarily, but to give me numbers and stuff like that. And I'll see if I can find it online.
So,
or do I need to talk more information?
You need to talk more, like you need more information. So, like, Rachel, what things do you think you would want to get from him?
I'm trying to get his income.
His income, what else?
The
household size, what hospital, the date of service, like what type of plan he has. So, yeah, exactly. So, like, we want to call the plan with him. So at that point, like, once I have a good sense of really what's going on, I think I will call the plan to find out why was the hospital paid and this portion of the claim is not paid. Sometimes they have a deductible and that's their responsibility. Sometimes the claim was not processed correctly. So we want to get the story from the plan. I want to see, like, why was this not paid?
So you want to do that even if you can get the ELB. Because I was thinking you could get the ELB first, then you want to call the company.
So it might take you a longer time to get the EOB. So you want to call the plan. So we will get the EOB at the point that we need help with a second level of use. But initially, sending the EOB will take you. So this case is going to go on for a while because it will take teams have to go to the that things will send the time, and then they will go through, then it won't go through. So it's just you make it a longer case that it really needs to be.
He may just provide him as one insurance, but he has another insurance. So he may have had Medicare, and he didn't give his Medicaid card to cover that portion. Like if I had a plan.
But I will call the insurance company to find out, and they will tell you, okay, this portion is not paid because it was applied to the deductible, or you went to an out-of-network bill. But just like in this case, anesthesiologists, many anesthesiologists do not accept any plan, so I will just immediately surprise them. So this is something that is a surprise sale, and the client might be protected. So we need to sell kind of the type of plan, is it an HMO, PPO, because the protection varies depending on the type.
And there's the emergency thing.
Yeah, we have an emergency waiting for. So there's a lot that we can do, but there's a lot that we also know in order to know in which direction to go, and then ultimately what advice they will give to us.
Do the insurance companies in the framework would have to disclose the emergency referral requirement? I would think
they do, but this is not like something that is applicable at this point because you're not affiliated. So you're not selling, your contract is and you're doing this. you first want to get like what's really going on. And the plan, by calling the plan, you will get a.
Well, once the decision is made, do you have to appeal it, or can you get somebody on the phone who will try to correct?
Usually,
I think this is just something nobody thought of, because like sometimes, they'll say, okay, I'll give you a break.
that happens.
Mostly they deny that they can, but they can, and they do.
They do it a lot. And that's, what gets these costs come in, and so depending on where you are, we will take it. So if it's a first level and we have a dual packet, we will do that first, and then for the second or external to the extent you need it, we will check. So it all depends.
Okay. So another case. Would anyone like to read about Lucille Ball?
Lucille Ball calls the helpline. She is changing jobs. Her health insurance coverage will end at the end of next month, and she will have a 2-month gap without insurance. She is also concerned because she has a $700 bill from her primary care physician that she may not be able to pay. I think I need to know a lot more about insurance, and maybe although we're covered in 2 months or something could be retroactive. We need to look into a lot of that.
So what are the 2 issues that you like? Or what is it that you see she needs? And what else? She has a bill. So she needs coverage and she has a bill. So for the bill part, you like what happened? Why do you have to bill? Did you see a doctor that is out of network? So again, it will trigger a series of questions that you want to find out, like why do you have to bill? And then for the insurance part, that's something else that you want to explore. Are you going to get insurance in a new job? How long is it going to take you to do that? You are eligible for a special enrollment period to the marketplace because you're losing your coverage. Does it make sense for you to do that? So it's a lot that you will have to take into consideration to help the client. But the 2 things that you were able to identify here is that she has 2 separate issues. One is that she needs coverage, and the second one is that she has a bill. And the 2, there are 2 separate course of actions that you will have to take to address those 2 situations.
Anyone have any other questions on this? It's so great to have you here, Priscilla. You can see how knowledgeable she is, and Okay. Who would like to read about Norman Rockwell?
Norman Rockwell calls the helpline. He has Empire Blue Cross Blue Shield with his employer. When he went to the pharmacy, his diabetic medication is not covered, and he has to pay full price. He knows that his insurance was just recently renewed, and he thinks there may have been a change. But this is a talk. And I guess the question also asks is his health insurance the prices of when to set that, and maybe even try to follow up with the formulary, because it may just be the medication not covered.
So how will you find that out?
Through the plan.
Calling the plan. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Calling the plan. Sometimes people don't want to make that because it's like I will have to wait 5 minutes on the line. But it's really sometimes what opens the door. That's the key. You have to hold a plan. Maybe that particular drug, because the plan was renewed, it's not in the formulary. Because there's another drug that is in the same group that will work just as well. And if there's not, then this is different course of actions that we have to take to ensure that the client is able to get the drug. But initially, it will be a matter of following the plan and finding out, is this drug on the formulary? How much will it cost? And can we authorize it?
Okay. Edith Wharton would like to read about Edith.
Edith Wharton calls the helpline. She has a rare disease and needs surgery that she's experimental. She's already killed once in a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, a child case.
But it was experimental.
Yeah.
We're assuming she repealed like her current insurance decision did not cover the experimental.
And it says it's experimental. It doesn't say there's any room for argument about that.
No. Yeah, there's a medical necessity. Yeah. So she has a rare disease and she needs the surgery, but it's experimental. She already appealed once and no. So most likely she's calling because she wants us to help her develop the second level appeal, you know, arguing the medical necessity of this experimental surgery that she needs.
And then there was like an internal and external.
Yeah. So this case is not something that you will take on. No. I mean, you will just do the intake and it will go to a case handler who will, you know, get the documents, will get medical journals and a lot more information to put together this.
So we wouldn't ask for documents.
So at that point, the only documents you're asking is for the denial, the decision of the first appeal. So you're asking for information, but then the case handler may need a lot more. But initially, that's what you're getting. And just as you know that, you know, the case will be, once documents are received, the case will be given to.
Okay, and then this is our last case. We'd like to read about Sean Combs.
Sean Combs calls the helpline. He recently lost his primary job but still has his part-time job. He does not receive any health insurance benefits through the part-time job. He wants to know more about Obamacare because his son has a lump on his leg and he needs to bring him to see that.
So his first problem is COBRA, but he wants to know about Obamacare, so we have to sort of brief him on Obamacare.
Yeah, and that might be his
He
solution.
doesn't say, like, find a way, what doctor to, well, you need income information, I guess.
Yeah, what type of case?
Family science. Is this a marketplace case that he needs to buy?
Likely, yeah. So what type of?
Because we don't know that without income and family science.
So it's a
It's a CNN case because he needs insurance. He's losing coverage and he needs insurance. And also there's a child case. Remember how I told you sometimes cases could be a both basis. So here is a CNN case because he likely would have to meet with a navigator to discuss his health insurance options. And then there's another need that this lump in the leg that, you know, you want to address, probably help the client get resources. So in the meantime, the child could start getting probably financial assistance for the hospital or something of that nature. So there are two cases here. There's a child case and then this case.
Is the COBRA likely to be a lot more expensive than
A
Obamacare?
lot more expensive, yeah. So most people.
Probably beyond gold, isn't it? Beyond platinum.
Sometimes it's at the platinum level. One of the things that makes a difference is the income and whether or not they're able to receive subsidy. Because for the subsidy, it makes a big difference. And with COBRA, you pay the entire cost for plus 2% of like administrative fees, so you're paying 150%. So it's more.
So why is it also a child case?
The child has a lump and he needs medical services. So potentially the child is also eligible for CHIP. So we can help the child. We can help the father find resources so that the child could get treated in the meantime. The child has a lump in the leg.
Because it has to do with coverage for the lump in.
Yeah, but there's a medical services need, so we can direct them to a hospital where they can get charity care and start getting care. So that, because it takes a time, you know, depending on when they're applying, you know, when it depends, it affects when the coverage becomes active. So if you have a lump in the limb and you applied, after the 15, it means that your coverage will become effective the following month. So, you don't want to wait like 45 days with a lump in your limb not knowing what it is. So you want to kind of direct the client on how to get services when they need.
Okay. And that's it.
That's it.
Thank you, guys.
So we have the poster.